Diana Zimmerman, sold-out shows in Las Vegas, Magic Castle in Los Angeles. What are like the main principles of magic?
A lot of people just think that doing a trick is the most important part. But when you make a slight change in that and you hit people emotionally, that's when you start racking up those 20 million in views. We're like, did we hire magicians, George? So we'd go in and we'd start performing and always get a bunch of business cards, and we'd always book more shows because everybody had so much fun. And that's how we would build up our client base.
Do you think a personal brand needs to be built over years and years? Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the New Trend Society podcast. Today I have here the world's foremost lady magician. She is a marketing genius and branding genius, has worked with the biggest brands in the world since decades, worked with some of the biggest magicians together as part of the Magic Castle here in Los Angeles. I met her a couple of weeks ago and I'm super proud to have her on the podcast, Diana Zimmerman.
It's great to see you. It's great to see you. It was really a fun talk we had.
Oh yeah. So, Diana, tell us about the Magic Castle for people who are not into magic and who are not from LA. What's that?
Well, the Magic Castle was opened in 1963. It's a private club. It's in a beautiful Victorian building, and it's a clubhouse for magicians and people that like magic. It's a private club, so it's very tough to get in. You have to know a member, but it is so much fun. You walk into this kind of Victorian mansion, and you can have dinner and see magic shows all evening long.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a Soho house, but with magic, right?
Yeah.
And it's very cool. Yeah, I had the honor to be there with my good friends from EO and Jason Latimer, who made this happen. And you also gave us a little intro about branding and all that. And I was so fascinated. So I said, like, hey, I want to have Diane on the podcast. And really cool. Tell us how you started out. I think your story is so impressive, and I would think our audience would be super interested in hearing about that.
Well, I grew up in poverty. I was very poor, and so magic was my escape to be able to be somebody special, to be somebody. So I saw a magician, and he would reach up and produce coins out of the air, and I thought, wow, anybody that can make money that easy, any profession, I want to do that. So I started learning magic tricks, and I realized that it did make me special. And it also did something else. It taught me to think differently. And because I was very shy as a young person, as so many people that get into magic are shy. Mm-hmm. And so this gave me something special that I could do, because I was bullied and teased a lot. And, I like to say I didn't know we were homeless. I thought we were just camping out, but there was a good part of my early life where we didn't live in a house. We did camp out and pick cotton in 116-degree weather so we could eat and buy food. So this really gave me something to make me feel very special. And
you're originally from Arizona, right?
I was born in Chicago. I was raised in Arizona. Yeah, this was in Phoenix. And we used to go pick grapefruit, and I'd sell it door to door, 2 for a nickel, so I'd be able to buy my magic tricks.
Wow, that's amazing. I heard there's one story when you got into magic that you went to Scottsdale and kind of like sneaked into these private parties or so. So for all of them who don't know, Scottsdale is a very rich part of Phoenix.
Yeah,
it's a little
the
bit
Beverly
north of
Hills of Phoenix.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of nice golf courses. There's all the villas, and people throw parties, right?
Yeah, well, what we used to do when I got a little older, when I was in my teens, is that my friend and I, we never had any money. And so, so we'd drive around Scottsdale and we'd see who was having a party. They had valet, parking and stuff like that, parkers there and everything. So we'd see who had a party. And so we'd knock on the door and we'd say, "Hi, we're the magicians." And people would always go, "Magicians?" Yeah.
We didn't order any, right?
Yeah, they did. We're like, did we hire magicians, George? And I don't think so, Francis. So, well, if you don't want us to come, I mean, we've already been paid. So if you don't want it, no, come on in. So we'd go in and we'd start performing and doing close-up magic and doing some magic for everybody and get wonderful free food and always get a bunch of business cards. And we'd always book more shows because everybody had so much fun. And that's how we would build up our client base.
That's wild. At some
You
point,
got to do what you got to do, you know?
Yeah. So at some point, you went to LA. We want to talk about this a little bit later. But first, I want to dig into the similarities between like marketing, branding, and magic, because that was one thing you did later in your life. You worked with the biggest companies in the world, with the Fortune 500 companies, with Hewlett Packard and all these kind of folks. So, what do you think is similar between branding and magic?
Well, at first thought, it doesn't seem like there would be, because magic seems like it's about deceit and branding and but if you think of it, what magic teaches you, for one thing, to think differently. Magic is about the impossible. And what is impossible? I am possible. So if you go into it thinking that you can achieve anything or do anything, like if I said to the normal person, let's make an elephant appear right here, right now, the normal person would say, I can't do that. But if you say that to a magician, they'll go, okay, give me 10 minutes. And I'll do it. So it teaches you to think that you can achieve the impossible. Now, how does that fit in with marketing? Marketing, you always have to be looking at a better way to build connections, to be able to provide your product with notoriety, or, build your brand and make it stronger. And magic, because of this, what I call imagical thinking, allows you to think in ways that you might not otherwise think. Yes, I can turn all of New York into a stress-free zone, or I can make a 2-ton linear accelerator magically appear in front of people in a trade show, and I can do these. But it also teaches you that you need to do it for a reason. There has to be a benefit statement to it. So the benefit to audiences with magic is they're taken into a world where anything is possible. The benefit of good marketing is that also takes you into a world where anything is possible for you.
So would you say it's mostly about mindset?
It's about mindset, yeah. It is so much about mindset. I remember I was talking with Carly Fiorina at Hewlett Packard, and she asked me where I learned marketing, where I learned brand, where I learned marketing. And I said, from a con man. And she's like, huh? She laughed, learn marketing from a con man. You didn't go to Harvard? You didn't? She said, Diana, you're one of the best you're better than my Harvard MBAs. And I nodded, yes, of course. But if you think about it, really good marketing is understanding what the customer wants. It's understanding their benefit statement to them. And so everything else is just making it exciting and making it fun. And if you think about a con man, I really did learn marketing from a con man. You think about a con man, who is better at selling you something, selling the benefits of something, than a con man? The Brooklyn Bridge, yeah.
That's so interesting. I'm so happy that you have the time today and that we can dig like so deep into all of that. I'm very fascinated by history, right? And I think nowadays, as everything's so fast right now with TikTok and Reels and here and this and that, we sometimes don't take our time to think back of how things have been done like in the past, right? And you had a big agency in the 80s and early 90s. And I want to learn and understand better how was business back then. Now everything is about blast, sending out emails. Like you send out 100,000 emails automatically with AI generated text and all that. How was business back then in the 80s? Let's do a little bit of time travel.
Well, it's a wonderful question. It's a wonderful question because, believe it or not, back then we didn't have an internet back then. Well, it was just getting started in the 80s, but there wasn't the social media kind of stuff and everything. So there was this thing called a telephone, and there was television, of course. We did a lot of promotion through television. But I think if you look back with social media now, the opportunities that people have to do things that were never possible or never be able to. I mean, I remember that when I was a magician, I would send out mailings. I would send out mass mailings. We had this thing called letters.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Ooh, a letter? What's that? Instead of an email. And so we would send out letters and then follow up with phone calls, But the principles have not changed.
It's just the medium that changed, right?
The media has changed, but the principles. I kind of equate it to, way back when, before digital music, you had to hire an orchestra and you had to compose a song. You hired an orchestra and you went into a studio and you played it. But today, any kid can become a composer. He can sit in his studio at home and become a composer. And so if you think about marketing as that way, the principles of becoming a great writer, a great songwriter, still have to be able to creative and lyrics and all that, have not changed. And so many people think, I can just jump online and I can just do this and everybody's going to come watch it. No, there has to still be that benefit statement to the audience. So.
Okay, got this. What do you think is the thing people oversee today they can learn from the past?
I think that a lot of the foundation, I have a Diana-ism. I'm always coming up with these little quirks, these little Diana-isms. Whatever your dream is, whatever your goal, like for me, it was magic. Magic was my foundation, but not my ceiling. In other words, I used magic as a basis. I used the principles of magic to be able to go on. And from when I retired from being the #1 lady magician in the world and touring all over the world and everything, then I went into, using those principles to be able to create spectacular and powerful launches for products and brand strategy. I coined the word strategic branding, but it was always based on the same principle of what is it that really the consumer wants. What is it that you want? What is the benefit to you?
So let's come a little bit back to magic. What are like the main principles of magic?
The main principles?
Uh-huh.
There's 8 main principles of magic, and all magic is based on those 8 basic principles. Make something disappear, make something appear, make something transform, and so it goes on.
Uh-huh.
And so when you look at those principles, a lot of people, unfortunately, in magic, just as with social media, a lot of people just think that doing a trick is the most important part. And that's fun and that's nice, just putting out a social media post. But when you make a slight change in that, when you make the trick about the person, when you provide story to it, and you hit people emotionally, that's when you start racking up those 20 million in views. That's when you start building. And that's what a really, really strong and good magician does. They bring that into the possible.
And in magic, I know there's like magicians, right? Like the David Copperfields of that world. And there's also, what are they called? Like the magic trick designers or so?
Yeah.
Explain that concept a little bit, what they do.
David is an absolutely remarkable person because he changed magic forever. And I was very fortunate because I was able to design some principles, some magic for principles. It's like a great actor. A great actor can probably write, but they have script writers that are even better at that than them. Now, David is really creative, and he's very good at creating things, but he can't create everything, so he will go to people such as myself or other creators in the world and say, Diana, I'm looking to do this. I have this idea to make a mirror ball float around the room. How would I do it? And that's actually one of the tricks that I invented for him. And so...
wow, so you sold a trick to him?
Yeah, I've tricks for David, and Chris Angel does one of my tricks, and most of the top magicians have.
Okay.
Siegfried and Roy, they did one of my tricks. Yeah.
Wow, how much can you sell a trick for?
Oh, it can go for, you can sell a trick for $500. You can sell a trick for $50,000.
Okay, substantial amount of money.
It can be, yeah, it can be. And I know when David wanted to make the Statue of Liberty disappear, now I was not involved in that, but when David wanted to do that, that was at that time the most expensive trick ever done.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And it used every single principle of magic to create that.
Okay. This is crazy. So it's such a big world, and you've been like all over the whole entertainment, right? I know you were very close with Siegfried and Roy, and as I'm German, like I know them since I was a child, right? Unfortunately, I never saw them. I was too small for when they were still performing. Yeah. But I remember, like my dad told me the story, right? When I first heard about Vegas, I would say like probably in the early 2000s or so. I was like maybe 8 or 10 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And he told me, he said like, there was these guys from Hamburg, and they just went on a boat with a white tiger and started performing, and then they went to Vegas and made it, right? And ever since I was fascinated by that, and I think, yeah, I kind of like I lost one part of my heart in Los Angeles, but the other one in Vegas, just because it's so much entertainment and it's magic, right? Mm-hmm. And then and ever since I was in love with all the movies, with the Ocean's movies and all that. So yeah, how did you meet them? How did you guys start out working together?
I grew up in Phoenix, as I said, and they would have these things called magic conventions. And I was always extremely creative. I was always inventing all different kinds of new tricks. Every year I would enter in the magic competition, and I would always win. In fact, I won so much they stopped me from entering because they said it wasn't fair against the boys.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they actually stopped me from entering. You can't enter anymore because you keep beating the boys. But I built quite a reputation as a teenager for being inventive and creative, and also for, just as a performer. So a lot of the magicians knew who I was. And then when I came to the Magic Castle, I married a magician who was also known for being very, very creative. We designed stuff for Universal Studios. We designed the Bionic Show, and so all using magical principles to do it. So I first met Siegfried and Roy in 1968. When they were in the Folly Show, and we became friends, because magic is at the highest level of magic, it's a very close-knit fraternity. Mm-hmm. So, but Siegfried and Roy were truly unique in all the world. I wrote the definitive book on Siegfried and Roy. They gave me permission. There's several books out, but I wrote the definitive book on them, and they gave me permission to write their story. And it is truly, I mean, they took magic so far beyond magic. Mm-hmm. I mean, the White Tigers came later in the show. What happened was that Siegfried got a job on. They both had abusive fathers. They were post World War II, and they both had abusive fathers. One lived in Bavaria, and the other lived in another part of Germany, and they both escaped this abuse. Siegfried was with the magic. And he got a job working on the T.S. Bremen, which was a cruise ship at that time. Now, they didn't have performers really working on cruise ships at that time, but they would have, maybe casual stuff, but nothing formal. And so he was working on there as a steward and, waiter, basically. And the captain found out that he was doing little magic shows for the rest of the people, the other stewards, the other staff. And so he asked him if he would do some for the public. And it was such a hit that Siegfried literally was really the first, that team was really the first cruise ship act. That was one of their first. And he met Roy. Roy also, about a year later, he met Roy, and Roy assisted him, and Roy would get paid for a beer for assisting him.
Okay, wow.
And then Roy smuggled a cheetah on board because Roy's uncle owned a zoo, and Roy was always down there playing with them, and he hated the way they were in these little cages. So one day he smuggled a cheetah on board without telling Siegfried, and brought the cheetah in to Siegfried's room, opened the door, and the cheetah lunged at Siegfried. But he convinced Siegfried that they should build a production box for this cat. And so they did on opening night, and without telling anyone they were going to do it on the ship. And they got fired.
Oh, okay, wow.
But there was a lady there from another cruise ship who actually owned a resort, who was so impressed that she hired them to work on her ship. So,
okay.
Yeah. And that's sort of how they got started. But they were so much more than magicians. I mean, they took magic to completely new heights.
Yeah, tell me more about it. I want to hear everything.
Oh, well,
it's so good.
From there they worked. They worked in Puerto Rico. They actually struggled quite a bit when they first left the ship because they had this cat to feed, and they were traveling around. And half the time, Siegfried talks about they wouldn't have the money to to buy food, so the cat would eat first. The cheetah would eat first. That was Chico, and Chico worked with them all over. And then they got booked, like I say, on other cruise ships. And that started the whole cruise ship phenomenon. Then they got their lucky break. They were booked at the Lido de Paris to work and created a sensation. The Lido is a small nightclub, and people would be almost as close to the stage as we are. And you can imagine this cat appearing.
Where was it?
In France.
In France? Okay,
in Paris, in Paris. And then they got asked to work at a nightclub in Puerto Rico in Barry Ashton's review. They were such a success there that then they were brought to Las Vegas. And they created such a success there. They were the very first variety act to be able to close a review show.
Wow.
That was another one of their first. They were so sensational. And then Kenneth Feld, who ran Ringling Brothers, picked them up, and then they opened in their own show at the Frontier. And of course, that was, I think, 30,000. I don't know how many shows they did, but they just were so fabulously successful. So again, they kept adding more to the, they added more tigers and everything. But the thing that made them successful, other magicians had used big cats, but the thing that made them so successful was that Roy, they had a story to their act. Again, it's about story. It's about making the audience care, not just producing a cat and you're done, but the story of Roy and how he changed the game in way big cats. And at that time, big cats were in the circus and they'd be trained with whips and they'd be trained with, abuse, basically, fear. And Roy said no, and Roy trained them. They lived with these animals. These animals lived in Jungle Palace. They lived in their home and everything. Beautiful, magnificent animals. I mean, they're still, big cats. But in fact, I'm doing a lecture in May about Siegfried and Roy at a big history convention.
In Las Vegas, right?
In Las Vegas,
okay,
yeah.
Nice. Do you remember how you guys first met each other?
I first met Siegfried. They would always come out because they were young people in magic. When they knew there were magicians in the audience, they would always, after their show, they would always come out and meet the young magicians that were there.
Okay.
And that's when I first met them. Yeah.
Wow.
They're so kind, and they were so.
So you just wanted to hang out, or just want to support young artists? So what was the idea?
Because they knew what it was like to be a young magician, and to go to.
And nobody gives a shit in the beginning, right? If you're starting,
Yeah, and so they would always go out and welcome. They welcomed me, and they would welcome the other magicians that would come. They were incredibly kind. There was a time when another magician, Siegfried did a bird act in his original act, and there was another time when the magician there had a horrible thing happen with his bird act, and the air conditioning got cut off and the birds died from the heat.
Oh, okay.
And so Siegfried would go between shows. He would take his birds over. So Johnny Thompson was the magician, so Johnny could use them, and then Johnny would bring them back so Siegfried could use them, and then because they do 2 shows a night. Back then, you did 2 shows a night, 7 days a week.
Wow. That's hard work,
right? That's hard.
How many shows do people do nowadays?
Oh, nowadays they generally do 5 days a week. Yeah.
5 days a week?
2 shows a night, although Chris Angel does 1 show a night now.
Okay.
I think David does 2 on Saturdays. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was a very different time. I mean, they worked 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
How did you get your first big shows? You performed all over the world. What was the biggest one?
Well, I had my own show in Tahoe, which was great fun, and I designed a whole new show to work in Tahoe, in Lake Tahoe at Harris, and I was the first non-topless show to go into that showroom. Until then, that was all the shows were topless, and so but Bill Hara. Actually, it was the last show that Bill Hara booked before he passed away, was my show, and he loved it.
Bill Hara's the founder of Harris?
The founder of Harris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, he loved it. He wanted to bring more family entertainment into the casino. And so, in fact, Siegfried and Roy were the very first review show to not go topless. On Friday nights on the Frontier show, they would have the girls covered. Until then, all review shows were topless. So that was another one of their first. And so with me, because I can tell you, when I first got to California, I was struggling. And then I met a young PR guy, and he is the one that actually branded me as the world's foremost lady magician. And my fees went from struggling to make $200-300 a show to $2,000 a show to $5,000 a show to $15,000 a show. Now, at that time, somebody like a Phyllis Diller was making $5,000 a show. So I was actually, But that was my first lesson in brand, and I just built this reputation up for, would perform in Japan and all over. So
wow, what would be your advice to somebody who comes to LA right now, 20, 25 years old, with nothing, struggling?
What do they want to do? The first thing I'd ask them is, "What is your dream?"
Most people want to be successful, right?
In what way?
successful. Most people want money, right? But I think I get where you're going.
Yeah.
You got to know your passion or your end goal.
Yeah, it's. I get asked that quite a bit. You know, what advice would you give to people? The first advice to give to people is tell me what your dream is. Tell me where you want to be in 5 years. Like, for instance, if you want to be an actor, that's a very different path than if you want to go into business and start a company. That's a different path. So once you get clear in your head, like with me, I knew I wanted to be the #1 lady magician in the world. And then when I got tired of performing, I knew I wanted to build a very, very successful, award-winning corporate communications agency. And now I'm working on trying to sell my best-selling books to film. And I've got one optioned already. So that's
good. Fingers crossed on that.
Yeah. So thank you. But I think the most important thing that people don't understand is that it's one thing to have a dream. It's one thing to do it. But if you're going to be successful in social media, you have to post every day if you're going to do that. You've got to really make a business out of it. And I know a lot of young actors come here and they look for a manager, and most managers don't do much for you, and they just sit around. You've got to be networking. You've got to go places where people are. You want to get in business? Go apprentice with whatever kind of company you want to do and learn every single thing you can about that company. You know, unless your father or somebody's just got a whole bunch of money they want to plop into it. And when I started my corporate communications company, I knew nothing about business. I was a magician working around the world, flying first class and, you know, private planes and whatever, you know, and I didn't really understand business. So I brought in, like, my CFO was the CFO at Craig Corporation, a $1 billion company or $500 million company. And I brought in the top people. And I have this kind of find people that are smarter than you and almost too nice to say so.
Okay.
Almost too nice to say so. So if you really want to, if you have a dream, like let's say you want to have a fashion line, and that's your dream, learn every single thing about it. Decide on a niche market. You know, are you selling to 24-year-olds? Are you selling to 40-year-olds? Who's your market? And then really learn what that is. And then surround yourself with people that know that industry, but don't be limited by what they do, because you're going to reinvent the industry. And in order to be truly successful, you have to reinvent what you do. You have to bring something different to it. You can't just be one of the crowd. If you want to be an actor, you have to reinvent acting practically.
I think a big part of your success is definitely the personal branding. And then I hang out with a lot of folks who do personal branding on LinkedIn. My business partner, Sarah Emmerich, she's like super big in Europe, taking care of all that. She hosts a conference all about personal branding and the creator economy and all that. But I see this like as a new trend, but it's been around forever, right?
Brand has been around forever. Yeah.
What do you think are the most important things or the factors that make a personal brand?
Well, yeah, and that's a very good point. There's personal brand and then there's your business brand. And they're both the same. They're both different. But with a personal brand elevates you as a person. Now, let's define what a brand is. Most people think a brand is a logo or a saying or a mission statement. None of that is true. That's all part of a brand. That's all what supports a brand. But a brand is one thing. A brand is a promise. A promise to deliver a consistent and compelling message every time. I mean, we were talking about Siegfried and Roy. Supposing you spent $200-300 for a ticket to go see Siegfried and Roy, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and there's no white tigers. That's why you went there, to see the white tigers. I want to see the white tigers. Or they decided not to do magic that night. Or you went to I don't know, you went to, Ritz-Carlton, and the service was terrible.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go back. You would not go back. So a brand is a promise to create a consistent and compelling message every time. And all we have to do is look at companies that have violated their brand. Budweiser was a good example recently. I don't want to get political here, but they did and practically destroyed the brand. Years ago, Walmart practically destroyed their brand when people found out that they were screwing their employees. Excuse my language.
Yeah. But at some point it changed back, right? Now I think Walmart is like a better brand. I don't know.
They have, but it's taken them 30 years. It's taken them 30 years to get over that, and they had to reinvent themselves to do that. So,
what do you think that they do in a good way that they changed it back? That people think it's good. It's a good brand.
Well, I think a really good brand understands who their buyer is, who their audience is, whether it's a personal brand or who it is. Like, for instance, I came here to talk to you, and you sent me a wonderful list of questions, and then I got to know a little about who you are and your company and everything. So now I'm able to talk to your audience in a way that hopefully will mean something to them.
Okay,
So it's understanding who you're dealing with. And this is where Budweiser went wrong. You know, they didn't understand who their audience was, who buys the beer. They just decided that they needed to be contemporary. I can understand that. They needed to kind of get into the modern world. But in doing so, they still have not rebuilt. They're still trying to rebuild from that.
So it takes a long time to build a brand, but it just takes a second to destroy it, huh?
Yeah, this is true. It doesn't have to take a long time to build a brand, especially with social media now, you know, because if you build a really powerful brand on social media where you consistently deliver this promise of a strong, you know, whatever your brand is. I mean, let's say that your personal brand, your primary characteristic is to be funny. And then one day you post things that aren't funny. Wait a minute, I tune in because I want to laugh. And now all of a sudden he's telling me about something really sad. And then the next time you tune on, you're talking about something else. And then maybe you're going to start losing the reason why people love you.
So my biggest struggle is basically I'm interested in so many different things, right? It's basically that's also my dream or my what drives me. I'm super curious. I want to learn how the world functions, right? I think that's probably why I'm also very intrigued.
But you have to admit, you are a genius and you're a very remarkable person. So
I'm okay. but I take the flowers. Thank you so much.
He is a genius and he is a remarkable person, and that curiosity is what's...
Okay. Yeah, so the curiosity, right? So I'm interested in this and that and that. And today it's like, in 2020, I found out about golf, right? And I loved golfing, started golfing. We started a charity golf tournament, made it big and all that. And I started posting about that. Then I got bored and was like, okay, what's the next thing, right? I learned about aviation, started my pilot's license. Now I'm doing this and started posting about that. But I get what you're saying. Like, if you change this over and over, people get confused and think like, well, what's this person about?
Unless that is your brand. Unless that is your brand. See, you're doing a podcast where you're bringing information to people.
Yeah.
So if your brand is, your primary characteristic is information, you know,
like trends, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like what's the new shit?
I want to tune in because guess what? I never know what he's going to talk about next. I mean, I love golf, or I don't like golf, but if, again, you talk about golf and you make it relate as a benefit statement, what is it about golf that is a benefit statement to everybody? To everybody.
Okay. That's interesting. I think kind of like, unveil a little bit the secrets or show people the inside of stuff or new trends or so, right?
And so as long as you keep that brand consistent, your brand can be expert in everywhere or curious about everything. Curiosity might be your primary characteristic. You know, let's go to this world and let's explore. Let's find out, what is it about golf? What is it about people in golf? How does golf benefit your audience? Because I hated golf. And when I was 50, was the first time I ever played golf. And I went, oh my God, this is wonderful.
It's not too bad, right?
I love
with the clubhouses, you have good food, you have good company.
Yeah, but you're outdoors, you're in the fresh air. It challenges you because unlike tennis, it's you.
It's you
against you. Tennis, if you've got a good opponent, you can't play tennis. I mean, nobody wants to play with you. I'm terrible at it. But with golf, it was me. It was me against me. No excuses, although we did make a few. But
you can also you can always blame the greens.
Yes, and the wind. But so you see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistently consistent. You know, so you bring people on to talk about all sorts of things, and people love it because I never thought, as long as what you're talking about, again, is a benefit statement to that person. In other words, they learned something from it. They're a better person after they listen to it.
Yeah. In our workshop, you put a picture about the kind of like triangle of three things you have in mind when you think of a person, right?
Well, what I did years ago is Stanislavski. Let me lay a little backstory. Stanislavski was probably the most prominent writer and character development person way back when movies, were in black and white.
Oh, yeah.
And Stanislavski came up with this idea that to create a really great character, you have to have a primary characteristic, a secondary characteristic, and what he called a fatal flaw. Now, corporations don't like having fatal flaws. So I changed the word to modifying characteristic.
What would be a fatal flaw? What would that be?
That would be like the modifying characteristic, and that is in conflict with your primary characteristic.
Oh, okay.
Because a really good brand is in conflict. Has conflict in it. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of conflict where you go up on stage and slap somebody during the Oscars or you beat somebody up. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you look at Apple, Apple, that's a company brand, but it's very similar for people. You look at Apple, and Apple's primary characteristic, the thing that you think of when you think of Apple, is innovation. You don't run out to buy iPhone 17 because it's the same thing as 16. It's innovative. You got to have the latest. You got to have the latest. And then if you think, well, what's in conflict with innovation? What word conflicts with innovation? What do you really want when you have a phone? Reliability. You want the latest toys. So if you think about it, you don't think about something that's highly innovative as necessarily being really reliable. But Apple said, no, we're going to make a phone that is incredibly innovative, and we're going to make it reliable. And customers
so there's innovation
up here.
Reliability?
Yeah, reliability.
What's the third thing?
So the third one that Apple says, and this is where they were so smart, and their marketing is if you haven't studied Apple's marketing, it's good to study. But they made it cool. They focused their designs, everything. You hold an iPhone, it feels nice. It just feels nice. I was actually talking to one of their lead engineers about what goes into how they how the touch, the feel, everything is so important. But also, it's a cool product. Everybody wants to get the newest phone because it's a cool product. In fact, one of the challenges that Apple is having right now is how do they continually innovate? I mean, what else can a phone do? The cameras, how good can they be? And so this has been a challenge for them the past few years. We'll see what the 17 comes out, but I'm sure it'll be wonderful. So they added this word cool, and a lot of their marketing was designed. And if you look at their original marketing, it was designed to make fun of, DOS and all this other stuff, and all this clumsy stuff. And then they showed always cool people with the phones, and they never said they were cool, because you never say you're going to be cool, but they
you
designed
just
it that
like
way.
it.
Yeah, and then they started giving school kids in their libraries Macs. And that was another secret to their marketing. They swept up the gold, and then they created it so it's integrated. An iPhone, your iPad and your computer and your phone, they're all integrated. Yeah, so
that's good. Let's talk about a good personal brand. I want to make this example on a personal
Absolutely,
brand.
yeah, because not everybody out there is doing that.
Like a Brad Pitt or Billie Eilish or somebody like pick anyone people all over the world know.
Well, yeah, maybe we talk about James Bond.
Oh yeah, James Bond.
Is that a good?
That's
a good
perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so if you look at James Bond, this is a character that was created. James Bond primary characteristic is loyalty to the state. That's what he does. That's what he is. He's loyal to the state. In other words, he's defending the state. So loyalty to the state is his primary characteristic. Now, there have been other rulers. I mean, forgive me for using a cliche, but Hitler was also loyal to the state.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between
in a weird
Hitler,
kind of way?
Yeah, in a different way. That's just what I was going to say. So what's the difference between James Bond and Hitler, both loyal to the state? All right, let's drop down now to the modifying characteristic, or what Stanislavski labeled the fatal flaw, the modifying characteristic. For James Bond, it's ethics. James Bond was very ethic. He would never walk up and just pull the trigger and shoot somebody. I mean, Superman's kind of that way too,
unless he really knows it's a bad guy, right?
Yeah, unless the guy was trying to kill him or something. But he would maybe bonk him over the head and drag him in to be arrested, but he just wouldn't walk up and just point blank murder somebody. So, he'd turn around and kill somebody. But Hitler had no ethics. In other words, Hitler murdered people just for pleasure, I guess, or whatever. So you look at those two characters, same primary characteristic, loyalty to the state, and then you come down to here. Now, what is James Bond's secondary characteristic?
It's ethics.
Huh?
Is it ethics?
Is it what?
Ethics?
Ethics? No, that's his modifying characteristic.
Okay, that's
ethics,
the modifying. Okay.
So what is it that makes James Bond so sexy and so appealing?
He's classy.
Yeah.
He's classy.
He drinks. He's suave. He's
nice. When I got married, I went to the tailor and told him, like, I want to look like James Bond, right?
There you go.
So,
don't we all, even women, want to be James Bond?
Oh, yeah.
We all want to be cool. We all want to have that cool under fire.
The only reason I'm drinking a martini.
That cachet about him.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, that's why he's so popular still today, because a good brand passes through time. A good brand goes through time. So when they made James Bond, Mr. Cool, Mr. Debonair and suave, they created a character that was totally irresistible, because up until that time they weren't. This was a new kind of a way to approach him, and that's why he has sustained for 50 years now, or 60 years, forever, and he always will, because we always love that. Apple iPhones, cool, So he had that cool debonair, never.
Okay, so James Bond. He is loyal to the state.
Yeah.
He has ethics, and he's classy.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, suave, cool, whatever word you want to use there. Now, let's take that for another person. It's if you were a performer, or maybe you are, you are a broadcaster. Like, let's take you, for instance, maybe with your podcast, which might be different than your business, your personality with your podcast. Is if I were to give you a primary characteristic that I would say intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
Because everything that you're doing is about bringing out with me, or I'm sure with your other people, to learn, to teach. So this intellectual curiosity would be a great primary characteristic for your podcast. It might be different for your business.
Yeah.
Because your business is leadership, probably.
Yeah.
You run a business, leadership. It has to be leadership. And if you look at all the presidents in the United States, and you take, say, Nixon, who was president, and then you take, let's say, Ronald Reagan, and I'll tell you why I'm using this. Keep the politics out of this. But one of the reasons why Nixon became so hated as a president, because he was a leader who didn't lead. The minute that broke, that he was, spying on all the Democrats and everything.
All the Watergate
He
stuff.
fell. He folded. He just folded. He just crumpled. But let's take when Ronald Reagan was shot. Same thing with Trump, whether you like him or not. He's a leader that leads. I don't want to go into politics here. But Reagan, he's joking with his doctor saying, I hope you're not a Democrat, he led, even though he'd been shot, and injured when he's going into surgery. I hope you're not a Democrat, because he was a Republican, of course. So a leader has to lead. And when you run a business, your primary characteristic has to be leadership.
Do you think a personal brand has to be polarizing, or does it help?
Explain to me what you mean by polar.
That some people really like you and some people hate you.
I think it depends. Again, it depends on what you're trying to do. There are people that you. If you take Howard Stern, and I don't know if people would know Howard Stern. He's a radio talk show host.
Okay.
He's the man people love to hate.
Okay.
Yeah, very controversial. So what is his primary characteristic? Controversy.
So okay.
So it doesn't really matter.
I mean,
but you have to have people love you. People have to love you, and so you want to be controversy, but also compassion.
Okay, got it.
So you put those two; they're opposite of each other. So his primary characteristic would be controversy, because that's what he did. And there's a great Siegfried Roy story about that too. But controversy, but with compassion. There wasn't a meanness in it. There wasn't that the minute people perceive you as uncaring or mean.
Yep.
Now, if you're a villain, that's a different issue. But villains are meant to be hated. So, yeah.
Okay. That's so good.
Yeah. You can make anything work as long as the audience embraces it. But the minute, let's go back to Walmart again. Sam Walton, who founded Walmart, was known as this really kindly old man. People loved him. He was middle America all the way. He started
all the way from Arkansas? Where's he from?
I think Arkansas,
Yeah.
And everybody loved him. And he started this company so that middle-class people and lower middle-class people would have a place to shop where they could buy things for cheap. And it was all about family, all about this. Now Walmart grows. And all of a sudden, buyers find out that the management at Walmart was screwing people. Their own employees could not afford to shop at Walmart because they were being paid so little amount of money. I mean, one of the biggest companies in the world is screwing their employees. And that's what turned people on. I know people today that will not go into Walmart because of that.
Just because of that, okay.
Yeah, just because of that. Because they abuse you can never, ever, ever abuse your people. I remember, who was the comedian? He was very funny, and he was like insulting the audience. That was kind of his shtick. But it was done in not a mean way. And one day he insulted, there was an African-American family, black family there, and he made a remark that just crossed the line. And he so turned the audience off, he never won them back, because he crossed that line of being mean.
Okay.
So,
what do you think is I think it's in personal brand, it's a lot about persistence, right? It takes a while that people get what you're telling. It takes a while that people understand your story or so. And I feel I'm also very impatient. That's probably also another character trait of mine.
That's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. I think
impatient is a really good thing, because impatient means let's do it.
But still, sometimes you need patience and persistence to just keep going. And do you think a personal brand needs to be built over years and years?
No, I think you can build a personal brand in 10 minutes. Now, to build recognition for it can take time. But if you look at just my personal brand, when I was a teenager doing magic, it was one thing. When I was an adult doing magic, it was another thing. When I became the world's foremost lady magician, it was another thing. It evolved. And then when I went into business, people don't want to do business with some girl that does magic tricks in a sexy dress. They want to do business with somebody that knows what they're doing. So that's how I evolved this whole thing of strategic branding, which I coined the word. So I became the world's most expert in strategic branding because I invented the word. How could I not be?
I found it very remarkable when you said, sorry to interrupt. So
yeah, please.
This thing, strategic branding with a trademark and all that.
Yeah. You were the only one that noticed that, which shows your genius.
Yeah, I think it's
perception.
It's very smart to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I wrote down in my notebook, use the word love brands more. That's what we use. So when I pitched BDX as a company, it's like BDX is a award-winning creative content studio, and we work with love brands. And then everybody asks like, what's a love brand, right? And so you got to explain it. And at some point, the more you use the word, the more people will recognize you with that word, right? They think like, oh, great, love brand, that's BDX, that's Benny, right? So
but a brand is something you never really discuss out loud. I mean, you don't sit on your social media site and say, okay, my primary characteristic is this. It's something that people perceive. They feel it intuitively. They feel it's like Jason Latimer, one of your friends and one of my proteges.
We should bring him on the podcast. He's a genius.
He is. You should. He's phenomenal. Phenomenal. But his primary characteristic is inspiration. He does magic. That's his foundation. Magic is his foundation, but it's not his theme. What is his primary character? Because everything he does is to inspire school kids to do more. And so, but he doesn't stand up and say, okay, I'm going to inspire you. He never says that. It's all done through action. And that's why brands are so delicate, because once you violate any of that attributes, you run the risk of doing it. But you can create a strong brand in one podcast. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it's not something that, but you do want to make sure that it's a brand that has longevity and that can evolve.
Yeah. Diana, I want to do a small game with you, and that's a thing we're doing here. It's a category called Build, Break, and Boost.
Okay.
So it's like 3 questions. First of that is, what are you currently working on, or what are you currently building?
What am I building?
Yeah.
For what?
Right now, like in general.
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, in my own life, it's very, very important for me at this stage in my life to be able to do whatever I can to help people achieve. So I'm really building in my own personal life, and forgive me if I'm not answering it correctly, but what I'm building in my personal life is a way for people to really understand that every one of us has something incredibly special about us. And every one of us can absolutely exceed whatever our dream is. Is it hard work? Yes. Is it this? But helping people to believe in themselves, because so many people did that for me, is really what I'm focused on now. And then professionally, I'm focused on turning my best-selling fantasy adventure books into a TV series for one reason. And that is because those books have changed the lives of so many kids. I mean, they're fantasy adventure books set in a world where magic is normal and sunsets last for hours and abundance is in abundance. There's no racism. There's no ageism. There's no genderism. It sounds like a perfect world, but it's not. Physical perfection is the law. So if you're not physically perfect, you're out. You're missing a finger or a blind eye or something like that. And this is the case of the heroine of the books. And so many kids, people with disabilities that are differently enabled are the most prejudiced against people in the world, more so than race, more so than sex, anything like that, sexism, genderism, whatever. They are the highest unemployment. They're the most bullied. So people that, maybe they're missing an arm or a leg or maybe they're blind are very, very, very discriminated against. So my books were written to show that everybody's special. Everybody has something special no matter who you are. And I got a letter about last Christmas, not this one, but the last Christmas from a boy. And I had spoken at his school and he said, "Dear Miss Zimmerman, I don't know if you'll remember me, but he said that you came to my school and I was going to kill myself."
Wow.
He's 10 years old. This is a kid that's 10 years old, and he was going to kill himself. And he said, "When I got your book and I read your book," I'm sorry, it makes me cry.
Yeah.
He said, "I realized that because he was black, but he's also differently enabled." And he said that I realized that doesn't make me bad. It makes me special. And he said, "I just want to let you know that I just graduated from high school with honors and I have a full scholarship to go to college."
Wow.
I have over 1,000 letters like that from kids. From one girl was, mentally differently enabled. Another girl got out of an abusive relationship because she didn't think anybody would like her because she's differently enabled. And so if we can use what we do to really help people understand that we're all special. We all have something special about us. And that sounds like a cliche, but it's not. And if I can help kids discover that, or people discover that, or businesses discover that, then my life's been worthwhile, in my opinion. So,
wow. Break. What's something that recently failed?
That I failed?
Yeah.
I've never failed.
You never failed?
Never failed.
Your flaws?
And I'll tell you why. Again, it goes back to what's the definition of failure. I have not succeeded probably 80% of the time when I try something, or 60% of the time when I try something, I don't succeed. But if you look at failure as a stepping stone, and this is not my idea, I wish it was, but if you look at failure as a stepping stone, what does failure do? It teaches you what you did wrong or what you should be doing differently. So when you don't succeed, which is the way I prefer to put it, when you don't succeed at something, then you say, okay, why didn't I succeed? What was it? What about my golf? This is another great way to talk about golf. What about that swing was wrong? Oh, I joggled like that, or I bumped like this, or in business, why didn't I win that account? And I would always call the client and ask for a debrief and say, what is it? Why did we lose the account? And most of the time they'd be honest. They said, well, you didn't live up to my expectations on here. Sometimes they'd say, because I had to give it to my friend.
Yeah.
But you learn about that. So if they say, well, I had to give it to my friend, then you say, okay, How do I become your friend? You know, in other words, there's always, so you cannot fail as long as you try. So I can honestly say I've never failed. I've not succeeded a lot, but I've never failed.
Yeah, failure is kind of like just try one more time. Try harder, right?
Yeah, try harder, try differently. Not just, you may have tried, I mean, I spent like 40,000 putting together a proposal for a company. And it was beautiful. It was the most wonderful proposal in the world. And I was early in my career building a career, and that was a lot of money back then to a company that's just getting started. And I thought, we're going to nail this. We're going to nail this. So we fly to China. The company was a Chinese company that does business here in America. We fly to China, and we present it, and it was really incredible. I mean, it was really incredible proposal. And I get a call 2 days later saying they're going with another company. Okay. You'd say, well, you failed. No, I didn't fail. I didn't get the project. So I said, could you please spend some time on the phone telling me I'd love to learn from you? And people love to teach. Everybody loves to teach.
Yeah.
So you say, I'd love to learn from you. As why? Well, I discovered that they'd already made a decision who was going to get the project. We were just a necessity to bid it out. Now, I could have gotten angry. I could have gotten mad. I could have been upset. Instead, I said, you forgot to ask Diana if this is a legitimate bid or if they just need somebody to fill out those two gaps.
Yeah.
So from then on, before I'd go spending a whole lot of money, I would say, now, I know that sometimes you have preferred vendors and sometimes you need to just get a bid for this. And most of the time, they'll be honest with you about it. So I learned. It cost me 40,000, but
that's definitely a good lesson, especially for our listeners. I know there are a lot of agency owners who listen to us, and I've been in the same situation, right?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that. That was
and I'm
great.
sure you've had that happen, where you bid on things and then you find out later. So now I ask. So that I learned. It was part of my college education.
That's good. Boost. What's something that's energizing you? It can be a person, a tool, a mindset.
That is such a wonder. You are so amazing. You really are. You ask the best questions. This is the best questions I've ever had on a podcast, and I've done a lot of podcasts.
It's just she's helping me on the pod. She's in Miami right now, but she did a lot of preparation for the podcast. So it's like I'm just here asking them
great
the questions.
I mean, they are fabulous questions. They really are. So what energizes me? I get very, very excited when I have a very, very high mountain to climb. Now, I consider myself a mountain climber. And what I mean by a mountain climber is somebody that always has to have a bigger challenge, a greater challenge, like getting out of poverty or becoming the #1 lady magician in the world. And I get bored easy. Or building a successful marketing communications agency or becoming, the nation's best brand strategist or whatever. I love that sort of thing. So today I've taken that love for it. And I said, if I could get my books turned into a movie, how many more millions of kids could be inspired that being different doesn't mean you're bad? It means you're that. If I could do that, and that's a very high mountain to climb because, as you know, selling a movie in Hollywood is difficult. But why? Why, Diana? Why do you want to do that? Because what really motivates me, and this is why I work with the young magicians at the Magic Castle, and it's our 50th year now of doing that, It's a lot of Saturdays. But why? Because what I enjoy more than anything else is seeing people succeed, seeing people rise beyond their own expectations of themselves, surpassing what even they thought they could be. And sometimes all it takes is believing in someone. Like, it's easier for me to believe in you than it is for you to believe in you. Because it's hard. I look at me and I go, oh, there's a bump there, a wrinkle here, oh, this, whatever. And you see all the things wrong with you. Unless you're just a narcissist, and then maybe you don't, but let's talk about normal people. But when I look at you, I go, this man is a freaking genius. He's got a brain that is just amazing. And so he could go like wherever he wants to go. And if I could be a little small part in this, like with my junior magicians, if I can help them move to the next level by inspiring them and believing in them more than they believe in themselves, that's what inspires me today.
Wow, that's great. Diana, thank you so much. Started in poverty, homeless, built a $1 million business,
Yeah.
an agency, the biggest lady magician in the world, sold out shows in Vegas, all over the world. It was a crazy story. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And I learned a lot. I hope you guys too. So if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, subscribe, especially on YouTube. We're putting all the episodes on YouTube with video.
Hit like and hit subscribe.
Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go.
Hit like and hit subscribe. That's what we do.
So thanks again for being here, and talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor. It really is.